Hello everyone and welcome back to another episode of my Outback Baseball 21 series with the Colorado Rockies here. And of course, last time we left off, we were at the trade deadline, and we made some moves. Which if you want to know those moves, probably watch that video if you haven't. But so we're here, and I said I would also check in on the playoffs, or kind of the what was the end of season race if we were going to be in it. And we kind of were not, but as you can see, we're 86 and 76, which is a pretty big improvement over what we were. I actually did consider jumping in for a bit because, as you can see, kind of by over here, we're pretty up and down pretty much the whole season, playing about 500 baseball after our start. But then, as you can see here, we had this winning streak here, basically this 4-game win streak. That kind of made me think that we kind of had a chance because we were making up some pretty good ground at that point. But it obviously didn't end up happening. And the Braves actually went on a pretty crazy kind of run because we were pretty much neck and neck with them at the end of the season, or at least at that point. And they pulled away a whole bunch. They must have won a bunch of those games. Or actually, I might have been thinking of a run kind of this beginning of the month thing, kind of end of this month. Because I think that's more what I'm thinking about, kind of around this time, because we were kind of just okay. And as I saw, their last 10 was like 6-4 with regular season, so they also weren't that awesome, but like it was pretty close. And I thought about kind of checking in. But as soon as I was like, oh, okay, I'll sim like a few more days, and then we kind of fell out of it a little bit as they were getting hot, so I decided not to. But so we did not make the playoffs. Very good season though, 86 and 76. Did not mean to click that. Much better than we've been, especially recently. We were pretty much mid-70s wins, and then we bumped it up here to mid-80s wins. Now, of course, our division is pretty good. Dodgers won 106 games, Padres won 98. So our division is pretty good, and it'll be tough to kind of get into that race with those teams. But we can definitely do it, and I definitely think we can make some moves this offseason to do that now. So speaking of that, let's go ahead and get into our team, and we'll kind of see how everyone performed this year. First of all, our catchers performed pretty well this year. Miguel Amaya was really good for us. We traded for him and expected him to be pretty good both defensively and offensively, and he was that. OPS plus of 95, WRC plus of 110. Pretty much league average bat as a catcher. We'll take that every single time. He did get banged up a bit. I forget what month it was, but he missed a little bit of time. Contreras took over the starting duties every day pretty much at that point, and he was okay-ish. His defense isn't fantastic, and his bat's supposed to kind of be his selling feature, but he's pretty much just a backup. He was okay, I guess. 325 on base is fine for kind of a catcher, backup catcher that is. His defense, is the thing that's kind of not very good. Catching pretty good this year. Tristan Cassis, he performed pretty well at first base. If you remember from the previous episodes, he didn't get off to the best start of the season, really. But he actually turned in pretty comparable numbers to his last season. You can see same amount of homers, exact same number of RBI, of course. That really doesn't mean too much, especially the RBIs, but his power numbers were pretty similar. His slugging percentage was almost within 10% of each other. His strikeout and walk rates were pretty similar. Even his WRC plus was pretty similar. He had a pretty similar season to what he did last season. So he's just a decent power bat in the league, not a stud really by any means at this point. But he's a useful player, 2.5 win player, not an all-star, but a productive hitter for us, especially in Colorado, where of course offense is kind of amplified. Garrett Hampton, of course, he got off to that amazing start. When we had some injuries in the middle of our infield, and he was playing second base for us every day, and then we eventually had moved him to center field. But then once we did that, he had cooled off a bunch. So then we decided to kind of remove him from the starting lineup, and he played kind of sparingly from then on. But actually, no, he's getting second base run here with some injury stuff. Because Levon Soto, he missed pretty much the last month of the season, I think maybe. Or he missed some time at the end of the year. And Almonte, he also tore his UCL, which I mentioned in the last video, I believe. But yeah, so he got a little bit of run actually at the end of the season, which is why he's played so much. But yeah, he got 500 at-bats this season, which of course, is not ideal. He is a pretty useful bench bat because he's pretty versatile, but definitely not a guy you want to play every day. Bobby Dalbec, he returned with honestly an even better season than he turned in last year. Actually, maybe not better. Still, he hit over 50 homers, led the league in homers. On base, not quite as high, didn't walk as much, struck out a little more. He strikes out a ton, 36%, but WRC plus 140, WAR of 6.8. He actually was pretty good defensively this year, which I was surprised at. He was a plus defensive third baseman, even though he was a decent bit below average last year, so that's kind of curious. But yeah, he grades out overall as a pretty average defensive third baseman, I think. With that bat, he was absolutely fantastic for us. An all-star again this year. He had quite the season. Then moving down to kind of shortstop spot, Steve Nicholson and his rookie season. He was actually very good. About a 4-1 player, started about 140 games. 304, 357, 482 slash line is pretty good. That BABIP, of course, probably about maybe where it's going to be. In Coors Field. He's a guy who doesn't strike out a ton. Doesn't walk the most, but a very good player. Or at least a pretty decent player offensively to this point in his career. He could grow a little bit more offensively. And about a 4-1 player. Of course, his defense, you can see from the ratings there. Pretty fantastic defender. About +6 zone rating. Maybe we'd expect that to be a little bit higher. He does have decent range and has an incredible air rating. His arm isn't the most fantastic. But he should be able to man the shortstop position for us and play a plus shortstop for a long time with us. And then kind of bench-wise, Rojas, he was very good in the very few at-bats he got this season, only 91 ABs. Of course, he was injured a lot at the beginning of the season, then came back, and we had an overcrowded infield, so he didn't have a spot. So he didn't really play. He's a player option. I actually don't know if he's going to pick it up because his morale's so low because he didn't get the starting spot he thought. So there's actually a decent chance, I think, that he declines this, which I thought was a player option. Maybe it's not. But still, if it's not, I probably will keep him around for depth anyways. We'll have to see. Tim Anderson, of course, we got him in trade, and he was, pretty decent. Only got 17 ABs with us, which is kind of wild. So, can't really take anything away from that. He won't be on the team next year. We'll be declining his pretty big team option, which is the whole reason we traded for him. We knew his money would be coming off the books. Then getting to the outfield here. Grant Levine called him up for a little bit because, he's fantastic. He's a pretty good bat. He's pretty good at first base defensively. Called him up because, he's getting up there in age. He's 24, and, he's been a pretty good player. If we didn't have Cassius, he'd probably be a starting first baseman. But, yeah, he's a good depth piece to have. Kyle Mitchell, here's our outfield now, which was very, very good. Kyle Mitchell, with the kind of injuries and kind of that situation with Josh Lowe going down, a lot of these guys got a good amount of ABs. The least amount is Mitchell with 300 ABs, and he was very good. He hit 20 homers this year, which is pretty crazy. Almost all of our outfielders hit 20 homers. Back then, he was pretty good. Of course, he's not the best defensive corner outfield guy. Pretty all-around decent bat, though. Good season from him. 2-WAR player. Trammell, he really took a step forward this year. Last year, he got minimal playing time. Was pretty good for us in that minimal playing time, but of course, it was always good to see a guy increase his sample with turning another good season, and he did just that. 4.5 win player. Getting on base a ton. 388 OBP, of course, not the most fantastic defensive player. Actually, his range wise, Forget about that. His range actually does play decently well. He's a decent speed, decent range. He can't really do much else than that. But range-wise, he's pretty decent. Josh Lowe had some injury troubles. Didn't turn in as nearly as good of a season as he did last year in the limited time. Still got limited ABs here, but was a little bit above replacement level. I mean, he's not really an ideal center fielder. Which is, where kind of he had been playing. He's seen some decent time. He was actually about average. Every time I put him in center field, he does a little better than I expect for at least a little run. I'm like, oh, maybe he could handle center field. But, in reality, probably isn't the best, to pencil him at center field, which, of course, we'll be trying to look towards this offseason. Joey Gallo, of course, a big acquisition of the trade deadline, picking him up. Of course, kind of historically, he hasn't really been that awesome. He had a good 2021 where his slugging was over 500. Of course, his BABIP always is going to be pretty low, or had been pretty low to this point in his career, at least in simulation. But he actually had a very, very good time with us in 2023, of course. Coors Field is a dream for Joey Gallo. I mean, that was, the whole point of kind of bringing him in here, thinking that he would just absolutely crush the ball, bring him here, and he pretty much did. He increased his performance a ton, pretty much played the best he had ever played, looking at his career numbers, at least for this stretch. 50 games, about 250 plate appearances, and he was very good. That BABIP was pretty high. I'm kind of interested to see kind of what it turns out to be in Coors. Of course, we've seen so far in this series that BABIPs pretty much go sky high in Coors. It's pretty common to see, above 300 BABIPs, for players. So, wouldn't necessarily see that from. And his was about 320. I don't maybe think that it'd be that high going forward. But, if he could do about this, that would be absolutely fantastic. I mean, WRC plus of 137 again. I'm pretty much the highest in his career. About 2-WAR player. I tried to play him in at some center field, which didn't go fantastic. He was below average there. He is a plus right fielder, though. Decent range, of course. He plays the corner outfield really well. So we'll probably just end up sticking him there. And we'll have him, or at least we should have him, until 2029. Yep, I just wasn't sure if there was an opt-out in there. And then Sam Hilliard, who was kind of the star of last season, hit 40 bombs. Slugged over 500, had a fantastic year. Of course, is pretty quick, pretty interesting build here. Huge guy, pretty quick, hits for power. Even though his hitting ratings aren't the most fantastic, can play some decent corner outfield. Actually didn't play the best in right field this year. But yeah, he was pretty decent. Of course, not nearly as good as he was last year, but definitely a serviceable player right here. Below league average WRC plus, but at this point we really don't need him to work out, and possibly could look to move him as he's going to be getting to his first arbitration year here and want a pay increase. So we'll definitely look at that towards when we get into the offseason. Pitching wise, it was better. I'm actually going to look at the team rankings here. Of course, we were pretty much tops in runs scored here. Better than we have been. We've kind of been 5th, 6th. Here we were 3rd. I think after the trades, we definitely, getting Gallo, that definitely improved. So, yeah, our offense, of course, not the problem. Pitching-wise, 10th in FIP. Things I kind of like to see here, getting up there in strikeouts, 6th in pitching WAR. So our pitching is getting better and better, of course. We had some pitching injuries, didn't get a lot of some guys for the entire season. So that, probably contributed to some of that. But hopefully we can, add to our pitching, build on what we've been doing here, and improve pitching-wise next season to, kind of chase the Padres and Dodgers here. Of course, our defense was pretty good. Zone rating was very good. Didn't make many errors. Defensive efficiency still was pretty bad, which I kind of talked about in the last episode, how I kind of didn't understand that because our zone rating's so high, and we aren't making many mistakes while covering a lot of ground, so do not understand that one. But, just we'll leave that alone for now. Maybe I'll figure it out later. But, the guys who were the best here were in our bullpen. Jose Gonzalez, another fantastic season, FIP under 3. He's a shutdown reliever that we should have for, a few more years. So that's pretty exciting that he'll pretty much be locked in the back of our bullpen. Durbin Feldman, Ben Bowden, Aroldis Chapman, even Tommy Doyle, Kyle Mueller, Ryan Rollinson. I mean, all these guys were pretty fantastic. Rollinson and Mueller were even pretty decent as starters, so they could get looks in the rotation. Maybe a depth pieces I plan to add to the rotation, so maybe they won't start the season in the rotation, but there'll be quick fill-ins, coming in from the bullpen and taking starting roles next year probably. And then, a bunch of guys here were just pretty solid for us. You see a lot of FIPS in the fours here. Junior Fernandez, Michael McGavin, who was really good this year. He'd proved to be the best pitcher on our team. Going forward, he should, keep improving. Brett Conine, he was even pretty decent for us. Marquez is kind of meh at this point. We'll have him for another season next year, picking up his team option. But then after that, not quite sure what's going to be going on. Tyler Ivey here. I'm getting into replacement guys who are just caught up after Almonte. Ivy, Montas. After we made that trade for him, he wasn't the most fantastic. Actually, didn't really walk anyone, so it was kind of poor walk numbers, at least relative career. Improved a bunch, but he was still getting hit around, so that might be failed at this point. Then Urias, I called him up basically because I couldn't delay him being on a rehab assignment any longer, and I had just had to call him up at the end of the season there, and he got an inning, which is whatever. We have one more year of his contract, so we'll probably let that run out. If we can't DFA him, I'll release him next year. So not really too much concern there. And then we'll look kind of around the league here and step into that because I kind of want to get more involved in this. So we'll kind of recap around the league this year so we know what's going on there. And then we'll look into how, and then we'll get into player stats, and then we'll end the video and get into the offseason. So the Angels won the World Series here over the Padres from our division. The Dodgers didn't even make out the division series, which is interesting. So the Angels win 4-2 in the Padres. Looks like they have a pretty good team. They actually looks like they're pretty injury hampered at the end here. Without a good reliever, Garrett Williams, Danny Salazar, Bauer, Rendon, missing some pretty big names right there. But of course they have Ohtani, Oliver Ortega. Their pitching's pretty decent. Pretty all around team here. Got some good performance out of some veteran guys here, it looks like. So they definitely were warranted having the World Series. Interesting kind of top of the lineup here, having Joe Adele, who didn't really get on at all at the top of the lineup here. But yeah, they're pretty well-rounded team. Jesse Winker, Mike Trout here. Looks like he's playing DH now for the Angels, actually. Still pretty good offensively. Still doing Mike Trout things offensively. Not the best. What am I saying? I don't even know what I'm trying to say there, but yeah. Not the best defensive ratings. They're declining. I might honestly try and see what I can do with him, because obviously I don't want him necessarily playing DH. He's only 32. At some point in his career, probably sooner rather than later, Mike Trout will probably be shifting to a corner outfield spot, because they do have young guys like Joe Adele coming up in their system who probably more suited to play center field spot at this point. So Mike Trout definitely will move to a corner outfield spot at some point. But like I said, he'll move to a corner outfield spot, and he won't probably man the DH spot, at least not this soon. And based on his ratings, he definitely can play a corner outfield spot. Like Jesse Winker should be DHing, because Mike Trout should be able to play much more capable left field than Winker. So I actually might go ahead and go around the league and look at this stuff. I'm trying to, make sure that things are being ran as realistically as possible kind of around the league. So I actually probably will look into that a bit, at least with huge players like Mike Trout. There's no reason this should happen, and it actually would kind of negatively impact his career, because he won't be getting any defensive WAR. So I think I'll go ahead and look at that eventually. But yeah, the Angels, 104-win team. They're pretty good. I actually do want to look at the Padres here. Don't want to go too in depth with other teams, but since they're in our division, we will be competing with them next season. I want to see C.J. Abrams. He's He came up for them actually last year. Looks like got his first full season this year. I mean, he's a stud. Good defensive and offensive shortstop. Got Josh Naylor. I mean, yeah, they got some good two-way players. So, wow, Hudson Potts turned into be a stud for them, which is kind of crazy. Because I'm pretty sure he went to the Red Sox. Or at least I might be thinking wrong, but I'm pretty sure he got traded to the Red Sox. Actually, I might be completely wrong, but I'm not sure. But yeah, so he's turned into an absolute stud. And that's what it looks like. Francisco Mejia, he had a fantastic season. He's looking like he's panning out for them. Machado, kind of a veteran-ish at this point. While he's only 31. I didn't realize how young he was, I guess, but his ratings are kind of declining a bit. And a so-so season from him there. Mitch Haniger, kind of meh. Gourmet, a good defensive second baseman. Actually had a pretty decent offensive season for him. And then their pitching, as I assume, where they're pretty good. Yeah, I mean, they have a pretty much a plus 4-man rotation there. Yeah, I mean, this team is pretty well balanced. Bullpen, maybe not the best, probably like a league average bullpen. Nothing that would like hinder them, just like an okay bullpen. But yeah, they definitely have a pretty good lineup and a pretty good pitching staff. We'll go ahead and get into around the league stats now. Kind of see, yeah, Dalbec, he led the National League in homers. Stanton led all of baseball with 61. He had a pretty good season. Looks like he was only okay in the past 2 seasons, but it looks like he jumped out a bunch and actually had a pretty good season this year for them. And then a bunch of guys here you'd probably expect: Vladdy Jr., Gleyber Torres, Trout, Alec Bohm, Eloy Jimenez, all having big power seasons. Average-wise, kind of, Arias, Lux, Soto. How many homers did Soto have? Kind of just 44. So, I mean, I feel like it's kind of consistent. Not a league tops homer hitter necessarily. I mean, yeah, he led the league in OPS right here. So, I mean, all around a fantastic hitter. Actually led the league in slugging too. Dalbec 6th on that list. I mean, yeah, he's here, and a lot of the power numbers. Dalbec, 22nd RBI. Soto far and away for on base. Triples here. Nicholson actually tied for second triples. A million people have 12. It looks like. Dalbec here the runs. Yeah, Dalbec here in slugging. I'm gonna mention that already, but yeah, a lot of guys in here. Yeah, I mean, around the league, I feel like a lot of this is things you'd expect. Mookie Betts made his way to the Nationals, of course. There wasn't no extension, when we started this game, so he looks like he became a free agent, signed elsewhere, replacing Bryce Harper there, who left the season before. Yeah, it looks like Soto was pretty far and away the best player in the league, or at least the best hitter in the league, I should say, of course. He doesn't provide that much defensively, I should say. And yeah, he was the MLB WAR leader, looks like, with 9.7, a decent chunk ahead. Actually, a pretty good chunk ahead. Seager, he was 9th in WAR here. Of course, a decent two-way shortstop. Actually, about an average defender in this game. But, very good offensively for shortstop and with okay defense. Then big jump down. Then you got guys like Ramirez, Yelich, Arenado. So, going according strictly WAR-based, of course, WAR is not a perfect thing. So, it shouldn't be followed, too rigidly. But it'd be a pretty safe bet that Soto should win a National League MVP, at least him or Seager. It looks like they were, these, probably the most valuable guys in at least the National League. And then Ramirez, here's our old guy, Arenado. We'll take a look at him. He's a stud. He had another pretty fantastic season for them. He's actually going to be a free agent relatively soon, 2026. So we, of course, are still paying 40% of his contract, but we got a ton in return from Boston. Yeah, he's playing fantastic defense at third base still. 32. So now we'll go ahead and look at the pitching leaders here. Kind of a bunch of guys you'd expect here. Ohtani, the ERA king. Syndergaard, Buehler, Gradwell. Looks like he actually developed into a starter in this league, and a pretty good one. Pretty average-ish one, maybe. But yeah, looks like he's been pretty fantastic. Yeah, Jacob Nix, Garrett Cole. I mean, yeah, all the pretty much top guys you think of when you think of the best pitchers in the league, they're all here. Then WAR-wise, you got Bueller, Nix, Ohtani. So not a ton, not a pitcher who really, really stands out here. So actually, it's going to be pretty interesting, I feel like, who wins the Cy Youngs, because everyone here is kind of so close, maybe value-wise. So it's kind of, I'd be interested to see who ends up winning. But a bunch of guys there. I wouldn't expect us to really have anyone in the pitching leaders, especially because all of these are dominated by starters, because of course you need a certain amount of innings usually to be considered in these league leaders. And we actually do have someone here, Bryce Wilson, home runs against. Yeah, I'm going to guess that's most home runs against, because Bryce Wilson wasn't fantastic for us. I actually sent him down at the end of the season. That probably wasn't on camera at all. But he did not have an awesome season, which is disappointing because he was pretty decent with Atlanta last year, and he had been pretty decent for them. So he wasn't that good for us, which I actually forgot he existed since we sent him down. But yeah, no one else here. And yeah, I mean, here's the pitching leaders. I feel like, more interested in hitting than pitching this game. I focus more on that. So I don't really feel like going into all of these pitching stats. Wow, Ohtani had a 81 whip. That's pretty crazy. And then kind of looking at FIP here. Looks like Nunez was a leader here. As I say, usually don't look that deeply into pitching stats. I go ahead and look into pitching stats, but I usually focus more on hitting. I don't know. It just happens. I don't know if I even intend to do it. But yeah, so here are the pitching leaders, and I honestly think that's going to do it for the episode. We went around the league, went over our team performance, much improved than, we have been, and I think, can I even preview the upcoming free agents I've been looking at? Yep. There are some pretty good players here at the top, at least pitching-wise. We got Giolito here, who's coming off an injury and barely pitched this year, so I'm thinking, even here you see his salary isn't too high. So I think he'd be an extremely interesting get. So maybe a preview for the offseason. But there's some pretty good arms here. Of course, I'm only looking at arms. Yeah, there's some pretty good players here that are going to be available that could really improve our team. And that's all I'm going to say about previewing the offseason so far. So thank you guys for watching, and I'll see you guys next episode.